Advice. Well, joining us now is T.W. Shannon, CEO of Chickasaw Community Bank in Oklahoma. Thank you so much for being with us here. I want to start off with the recent jobs report. Companies say they're adding jobs. They're looking for employees. But yet we do know that for black men in particular, their demographic is the lowest in terms of jobs. What are your thoughts on why black men seem to be lagging behind the rest of the population when it comes to employment?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be with you. And certainly, I think we've all been disappointed by the Biden administration and their handling of the economy. As you mentioned, the jobs report has been very disappointing nearly every single time that it's been given, but particularly for people of color. I mean, the unemployment rates for women, blacks, Hispanic and Latinos, Asian Americans, and workers without a high school diploma or college degree, they all went up in June. And I think, partly what we know is that it's directly related to policies that are coming out of the White House, whether we're talking about those policies that are wreaking havoc on small businesses across the country, or lockdown policies from liberal mayors across the country that created a lot of the problems in our urban centers. Those are the policies that are really affecting the jobs numbers for African Americans. And it's unfortunate, but I am confident that, again, we're resourceful people. And as a CEO of Chickasaw Community Bank, where, we engaged in the PPP loans, where we were helping minority businesses and people to grow their businesses, I am encouraged by the entrepreneurship of minority communities, and I'm hopeful that even despite the failed policies of this administration, that we'll still be able to recover some of the jobs that were lost since Biden's taken office.
Can you give me an example? Obviously, that's your opinion, but I want an example of what you say is a failed policy of the Biden administration that directly affects the employment of African Americans.
Well, one that we can look at for sure is the policies that have affected the inflation. We have out of control inflation right now. And inflation is really the hidden tax, right? Because inflation affects people of color disproportionately more than it does people who are in a medium to a higher income bracket, because the amount of wealth that is having to be spent out of a household on basic supplies because of inflation goes up substantially, and it's felt more in those communities. And really, it started with the attack on jobs by this administration as it relates to energy. We know that energy jobs here in Oklahoma provide a terrific living for people of color and others as well. But unfortunately, when those pipelines were closed, we saw a lot of jobs that frankly left the country. So that's just one example where we're seeing the high cost of inflation disproportionately affecting African American men and minority households as a whole.
Yeah, and we keep hearing that across the country they are hiring. There's lots of jobs. Again, black men over the age of 20, the statistic is that they have the highest unemployment rate of all race and gender groups tracked by the Department of Labor. So there's all these jobs. What do you see as the problem then with black men not being able to get those jobs that are out there?
Well, part of it, I think, is, it's location, right? Many of our African American communities are concentrated in urban areas, and these urban areas, which were, frankly, governed in large part by bastions of liberal policies that kept the lockdowns in place much longer than they needed to. And so we're seeing that in those areas, that those job opportunities, they've been slower to recover across the board, not just for minorities, but for everyone. But again, our minority communities are hit much, much harder. I mean, you take, for instance, states that are led not by, Democrats, but led by Republicans, they average an unemployment rate of just 4.5%. Whereas in Democrat states, it's at 6.1% higher. And so I guess what I would say is, capital is a coward. It will not flow to a hostile environment. And in many of these areas, capital has been resistant to flow into those communities because of the high taxation rate. I mean, again, allowing people to keep more of their money, that is a very good thing, not just for African Americans or other minorities, but it's good for everybody. And unfortunately, I think this administration and the White House would like to see more taxes taken out of people's hands, even during the middle of a pandemic. I think the last estimates of the Biden introduction of his budget.
That's for people making over $400,000. The tax issue.
No, actually,
so I don't know if that really.
Actually, it's not. In the Trump tax plan that was passed, over 90% of Americans saw a reduction in their tax liability. So if you're talking about removing the Trump tax cuts, you're going to see taxes go up for all Americans, not just a specific few. But in Biden's plan, for sure, those taxes are at least $3 trillion of new taxes that are being introduced. And again, those taxes are going to get passed down. Yes, they may be assessed to businesses initially, but what we know for a fact is they actually get passed down to consumers in the areas of higher prices for goods and services. So yeah, it's actually a tax on everyone, not just the middle class.
Well, TW, we could probably keep on going on with that debate and pull up facts and figures, but we appreciate you joining us here on BNC Live. TW Shannon, CEO of Chickasaw Community Bank in Oklahoma. Appreciate your time. Come back and see us.
Thank you for having me.